Good morning, children. Today we are going to discuss about another important concept, that is levels of biodiversity. So, what is biodiversity? Life in different forms is called biodiversity. So, in this concept, we will be discussing about levels of biodiversity. What is levels of what are the levels? How many levels are there in the biodiversity? And what is the importance of the biodiversity? That all the things we will be discussed. In the last class itself, I told levels of biodiversity. In that, Edward Wilson, one of the great scientists. What is the scientist name? The great person, Edward Wilson, is a great person, scientist, popularized the term biodiversity to describe diversity at all levels of biological organization, from population to biomes. Why you popularized the term biodiversity? To describe diversity at all levels of biological organization, from populations to biomes. Populations to biomes, all levels. To describe that, he popularized the term biodiversity. It's a very important point you should have to remember. Edward Wilson. Edward Wilson. The term biodiversity, Walter Rosen. Walter Rosen, the term biodiversity. Edward Wilson popularized the term biodiversity. There are three levels of biodiversity is there. What are the three levels of biodiversity? How many levels? Three levels. The first one, genetic biodiversity. The second one, what is the important one? Second one, that is species diversity. Genetic diversity, species diversity. Third one, what is the third one? This is another important, that is third one, community or ecosystem biodiversity. This one. So like this, there will be different concepts are there in this video. So you should have to listen very carefully. Number one, the genetic diversity, genetic makeup. So refers to the differences in genetic makeup. Differences in the, which one? Differences in the genetic makeup. Differences. Okay, differences in genetic makeup. So what is genetic makeup? Number and types of genes. Number and types of genes between two distinct species. Okay, and to the genetic variation within a single species. What is that? Between the distinct species and to the genetic variation within a single species. So number and type of genes between the distinct species and to genetic variation within a single species called genetic diversity. Genetic diversity can be measured. Okay, genetic diverse also very important point to remember. See here, genetic biodiversity, genetic makeup between distinct species and to genetic variations between distinct populations, between distinct species, genetic variation between distinct populations of the same species, distinct population of same species. Okay, this one important. Within the population, within the species, distinct species. Okay, on the same genetic diversity can be measured by using what is called, see, between the population, between distinct populations, single species. So genetic diversity can be measured by using which one? Molecular techniques. Which one? Molecular techniques. India has, what are the molecular techniques? You know very well. PCR, ELISA, polymerase chain reaction, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Okay, like that. Molecular techniques are there. With those techniques, we can measure the genetic diversity. 50,000 genetic variations of paddy. 50,000 of varieties of paddy are there. So even 1,000 variants of mango. They are all genetic diversity only. Variations of gene. A species increase with diversity in size and habitat. Size and habitat also will be increased. Different races, okay, different races will be there. It results in the different races, varieties and subspecies. Because of genetic diversity, what will happen? Different races, varieties and subspecies will be formed. For example, Rauwolfia vomitaria. So very important bit. Rauwolfia vomitaria. A medicinal plant. A medicinal plant growing in different stages, different ranges of the Himalayas. Rauwolfia vomitoria, a medicinal plant. Rauwolfia vomitoria, a medicinal plant growing in different ranges of Himalayas. Okay, so what's the specialty Himalayas? Shows differences in the potencies. Shows the difference in the potencies and what you call concentration of the active ingredient reserpine. Potency and concentration of active ingredient of reserpine due to genetic diversity. So potency, active ingredient of reserpine will be vary in the different what you call medicinal plant Rauwolfia vomitoria. So what you can understand, genetic diversity, okay, helps in the developing adaptations and changing environmental conditions. Genetic diversity develops any adaptations to changing what you call to changing environmental conditions. This point you should have to very important. So Rauwolfia vomitoria, a medicinal plant growing in different ranges of Himalayas. Okay, and the variation how it will be in the Rauwolfia potency and the active ingredient of reserpine will be vary in the Rauwolfia vomitoria plants of different ranges. Now, the genetic diversity helpful for what? Develops the adaptation, changing environmental to adaptations to changing the environmental conditions. Changing the environmental conditions. That is important. Okay. So what is genetic biodiversity? Genetic makeup, number and type of changes. Okay. Genes between distinct species, between the distinct species and to the genetic variation within a single species. Within a single species, genetic variation distinct species within a single species, and also very covers the genetic variation between the distinct populations. Okay, distinct populations and what you called on the same species. So how can you identify the genetic biodiversity, genetic biodiversity? By molecular techniques. There are 50,000 genetic variations of paddy. You know, small sized paddy seed and large sized. Some will be big, some will be small. So like that, some will be tasty, some will be what you called enriched vitamin E, enriched golden rice. Like that, you know very well. 50,000 genetic variations of paddy, 1,000 variants of mango will be there. Variants of genes of species increase with the diversity, size and habitat. So variation of genes of the species increases with the what do you call it? The size, diversity, size and habitat. Size and habitat increasing, the variation of genes also will be increased. Different races, varieties and subspecies also forming because of what you called this genetic diversity. So different races, varieties and subspecies also forming because of this genetic called biodiversity. For example, Rauwolfia vomitoria. What is it? Rauwolfia vomitoria, a medicinal plant growing in different ranges of Himalayas. A medicinal plant growing in different ranges of Himalayas. So what is importance of this? This is importance, the potency, okay, potency and concentration of the active ingredient. So different ranges of Himalayas shows the difference in the potency and different in the active ingredient of reserpine will be shows the variation, genetic variation in the Rawalpindi vomitor. So genetic diversity helpful for the developments and adaptations to changing environmental conditions. So changing environmental conditions going on in the sense the genetic diversity help to develop the adaptations. Next, species diversity. What is species diversity? That is important. You know very well, species diversity in the sense refers to the variety in number and richness of the species. Variety in number and richness of the species at any habitat. Variety in number and richness of species at any habitat. This is important. The number of species per unit area at specific time is called. The number of species per unit area at specific time is called, what do you call, species richness. Species richness. Number of species per unit area in a particular time, given time in the sense, that is called, what do you call, species richness. Which denotes the, what is the importance of the species, which denotes the, what is called, measure of species diversity. It is useful to the species richness, useful for the identification of number of species diversity. Species richness. The three indices of diversity are, number one, see now, number one, alpha diversity. What is called? Alpha diversity. Okay, this is the most important. Alpha diversity and gamma beta diversity and gamma diversity. So the more number of species in area, more is the species richness. This one also you know that. So next important thing is the Western Ghat. Western Ghat amphibians have more than the, what is called, Eastern Ghat. Western Ghat amphibians are more than the, what is called, Eastern Ghats. The three important, what I said, indices of diversity are alpha, beta and gamma. Come on, you see. Alpha diversity. It is measured by counting the number of taxa. Alpha diversity means number of taxa within a particular area, community or ecosystem. Either area or community or ecosystem within a particular area. That's called alpha diversity. Then come to beta diversity. Beta diversity. It is a species diversity between two adjacent ecosystems. It is a species diversity between two adjacent ecosystems. It is in a one ecosystem. It is between two ecosystems. It is beta diversity. So by comparing the number of species unique to each other ecosystem, so we can compare the number of species on each and every ecosystem. Beta, two ecosystems. So that is beta ecosystem. Next beta diversity. Next gamma diversity. Gamma diversity refers to the habitats. Okay, habitats over the total landscape or geographical area. Total landscape or total geographical area, not ecosystem, not species, not a community or two different ecosystem. All overall geographical area comparison is there in the sense that is called gamma diversity. Next, community ecosystem, varieties of habitats. What do you call it? It is a variety of habitats, biotic communities, ecological presence in the biosphere. Niches, trophic levels, ecological process like nutrient cycles, food webs, energy flow, okay, biotic interactions, like that. This all will be tell community ecosystem diversity. India with its alpine meadows, rainforests, what you called, mangroves, coral reefs, okay, grasslands and deserts, okay, as one of the greatest ecosystem diversity on the earth. So alpine meadows, rainforest, mangroves, coral reefs, grasslands, deserts all have greatest, what you called, ecosystem diversity on earth. Greatest ecosystem diversity on the earth. This alpine meadows, rainforest, mangroves, coral reefs, grasslands, deserts. Okay, like that there will be species diversity, genetic diversity, and community or ecosystem diversity will be there in this chapter. Okay, children, one by one should listen very carefully. First, levels of biodiversity. Edward Wilson popularized the term biodiversity to describe diversity at all levels of biological organization from population to biomes. The three levels of biodiversity are genetic biodiversity. The genetic biodiversity, first, genetic makeup, differences between number and type of genes between the distinct species, and to the genetic variation within a single species, between the species or within a single species. Also covers the between distinct populations of all the same species. See, molecular techniques are very useful to find out the genetic biodiversity. For example, to understand this all, you see 50,000 genetic variants only in the paddy. Paddy only 50,000 genetic variants. 1,000 variants of mango. Understand or not? Genetic makeup, change in the genes between distinct species. And to the genetic variation within a single species, within a paddy, how many? Number of 50,000 genetic variations. So even mango, how many? 1,000 variants are there. Okay, variations of genes. How can you measure it? By the molecular techniques. A species increase with diversity. When the species increase with the diversity size and habitat, so different races, varieties and subspecies also will be formed because of this genetic biodiversity. Next, for example, Rauwolfia vomitoria, a medicinal plant growing in different ranges of Himalaya, shows the variation between potency and active ingredient of reserpine. So that is genetic diversity. The genetic diversity develops in the adaptations to changing environmental conditions. So genetic diversity helpful to develop the adaptations changing the environmental conditions. Species diversity, variety in number of species or richness of species on any habitat. Number of species per unit area in particular time is called species richness. Western Ghats have more amphibians than the Eastern Ghats. So that is a diversity. So there are alpha diversity, beta diversity, gamma diversity, like that is there. Counting the number of taxa within a particular ecosystem or area community is called alpha diversity. Between the two ecosystem population or species is called beta diversity. Total geographical area, the diversity of the habitats over the total landscape or geographical area is called gamma diversity. Then community or ecosystem diversity. This is the important. Community means you know very well. Different groups together form communities. Okay. Is the variety of habitats. Biotic communities and ecological process in the biosphere. Is the diversity of which one? Variety of habitats, biotic communities, ecological processes in this biosphere. It is the diversity at ecosystem level due to diversity of ecosystem levels. Due to diversity of which one? Niches, trophic levels, ecological process like nutrient cycles, food webs, energy flows and biotic interactions. These all are called diversities only. So India with its alpine meadows, India especially have alpine meadows, rainforest, mangroves, coral reefs, grasslands, deserts. These all are very full developed and high developed greatest ecosystems diversities on earth. Greatest ecosystem diversity on the earth. Like this you should have to remember. So all are important. So Rauwolfia vomitoria example for genetic diversity. How many need bits? Genetic varieties, genetic biodiversity, how can you measure? By molecular biotechnology, molecular techniques. How many paddy variants? Genetic variants, 50,000. How many mango genetic variants? 1,000. Because of the species richness, because of the what you called this species increase with the diversity size and habitat. So what is beta diversity? Between the diversity between the two adjacent ecosystems. What is gamma diversity? Diversity of the habitats over the total landscape. Okay, what is community ecosystem? Variety of habitat, diversity of variety habitats and biotic community, so ecological process in biosphere, like in between decays, tropical levels, ecological process, like nutrient cycles, food webs, like that. So India have greatest biodiversity ecosystems. Okay, system diversity on the earth. Why? Because alpine meadows, rainforest, mangroves, coral reefs, okay, grasslands, deserts are there.